Good morning. Wow, this has been a heavily loaded service already. I think I can feel the vulnerability, the emotion, and the support in the room and all around us. Thank you, Lenore. I'm honored to have been asked to speak from my own experience on the topic of promoting wellness and resiliency in times of mental health challenges. Certainly, the title itself suggests hope and/or strategies to help one get through a personal crisis, or perhaps learn to live with a particularly painful ongoing challenge, whether within oneself or with that of a loved one, or both, or more. As we'll each be addressing alternate perspectives on tools, approaches, experiences, or resources in the broad arena of mental health in an extremely short time, allow me to simply open with the very general premise that contending with our mental health is a fundamental part of the human experience, the human condition. Not something to be hidden, brushed aside, marginalized, or diminished in any form, nor stigmatized. At one time or another, we all face tough mental and emotional challenges, and we certainly need not look far, as example today, to know that on personal and societal levels, struggling and suffering are prevalent, in fact, rampant, just like the rising and subsiding as predictably as the tides. Given my role today is to share some insights gleaned from my own family experience, I thought I'd begin by offering the most crudely simplistic diagnostic, though not wholly defining, background of a family member, followed by referencing a few experiences, and I will try to abbreviate because I know time is running by quickly. And finally, noting some lessons and practices I have found helpful in restoring balance to my own life. My challenge has been more of a long, ongoing one, tied to my now 45-year-old daughter, whose anonymity I will protect. Lest you wonder later on, I will tell you now that she's currently doing quite well, living in a group home, in fact, only a few blocks around the corner from here. Diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, part of an earlier dual diagnosis with past drug addiction. Her life had started out well with a loving family and an abundance of opportunity, but gradually evolved into a series of traumatic, nightmarish cycles over the next 25 years. Terrible for her and haunting, no piece of cake for me. Watching her cycles through self-medicating, developing addictions, spiraling downward, entering various programs one after another for treatment, being prescribed medications that helped, but then she subsequently went off of, watching her spiral further into delusion and psychosis. It's not been a fun cycle. I have often watched her taken away in handcuffs or seen her taken away in an ambulance. As a mother, my own emotions have cycled through all that you can imagine: loneliness, terror, even anger, guilt, hope, and then disappointment, depression. These emotions, among others, have torn at my soul and taken a toll on my health as I continued in earnest to help my daughter any way I could and lead an otherwise normal life. I lived in fear of the next incoming call, never knowing whether it would be from an officer, a hospital, a jail, a coroner. During a protracted period of homelessness in my daughter's life, I knew only sleepless nights. So, given that summary, what have I learned? How have I coped? What tools or lessons have I found particularly useful? Early on, catch my place here, I'm sorry. In trying to abbreviate, I've made all sorts of swirls and arrows and notes. Early on, sources of help seemed elusive and far between. I have found that I also thought I could carry this whole load alone, not wanting to be a burden on society or friends or family. But I've come to learn differently. Law enforcement at times is something I've had to call on. It's something I've had to rely on. It's been there as backup, but there was always the potential and sometimes the actuality of police brutality. Something I know Adrianne knows something about. On the other hand, I have also learned in recent times of more tools and resources within the county of which I've taken advantage, whether reaching out for personal security and support, or for learning more about how to better handle the situation with my daughter. First and foremost of lessons I've learned, I've increasingly learned to not try and take on a whole struggle or crisis alone. One need not ever be alone in dealing with a short or long-term crisis or challenge. When reaching out for whether reaching out for personal individual support or tapping into the entire social services network or mental health through mental health services to assist a loved one, it's critical to keep on trying. If one person or program doesn't help, try another or try again. I know Chris is going to discuss and elaborate on some of the county resources, so I'm not going to go back over the various things I've learned about them, but I do believe in Napa County in recent years, these resources have grown and improved, and I have seen personal results. One quick example, which I will relay, which involved just less than 2 years ago, despite hardships with police interaction in the past, it wasn't, as I said, that long ago when my daughter actually fell off meds again, was psychotic, hopped a bus to San Diego in hopes for an interview for a movie role. I quickly, because of a text she sent me, alerted the Napa PD. Napa PD communicated with San Diego PD. San Diego PD communicated with the local crisis center, which in turn communicated with the crisis center here in Napa. The response team here was wonderful. The coordination, the collective effort in getting her back home after a few days of stabilization went perfectly. I can't say it always goes that way, but that was a very positive experience. Sometimes cards are lined up right, the stars are lined up right to get the response needed and in time. So I like to say too that I don't want to underestimate the power of denial, compartmentalization, geographical cures, or retail therapy. Although in truth, those are really only decent short-term strategies. I have found that longer-term results and greater satisfaction come from taking deliberate, incremental steps in self-care. I've regularly taken short mental breaks to tune out the noise within and around me, either through a long hot soak in a tub or a long walk with a friend. Doing whatever it takes to let go of the stress and check out for a while and just breathe and take care of oneself is an important part and a skill that one must develop when dealing with any tough challenge. Calling on a friend is an integral part of a support network. Tapping into whatever sort of support network one can build is another tool and very important. Tapping into one's faith community. I think humor has always played a big role for me. Even in the darkest of sleepless nights, I've often kept a Bill Bryson or David Sedaris book on my bedside table as either can cause a smile or laugh to erupt from somewhere deep within me. Just that momentary lightening or levitation of mood seems to bring a certain calm to bear. Finding positive wherever and whenever possible. One small shift in approach or one small shift in approach or attitude can make a vast difference in how well one navigates the path through pain and helps to build resiliency. I failed to mention earlier that educating oneself, arming oneself with knowledge is truly power. Reading, learning more about how the social services network is available to one, learning the ways in and out of medical institutions, how the legal system works, just reading more on the subject of mental health. All of this knowledge builds confidence and effectiveness in getting the support or the results needed. My daughter's journey has given me, yes, some pain, some struggles, but moreover, some life-giving lessons, which make me all the more appreciative of how important it is to take care of ourselves and one another. One truly need not be alone, or at least may it be so. Thank you.
Next is Adrianne DeSantis. Thank you, Parry. That was beautiful. Thanks. Can you hear me? You may have heard the saying by Hunter S. Thompson that life is not a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride." That epitomizes my son, Richard, who enthusiastically squeezed every drop of living out of his 30 years. Lenore told us to practice what we were going to read and be mindful of our inflections, so partially to get a control of our emotions. I did practice. Anyway, Richard had a sense of humor that was sometimes wry, sometimes playful, and pretty much ever present. Of course, there were the times when he was melancholy, like all of us. At such times, he brooded about the wrongs and hard times he had faced. Some of you heard my story about the death of Richard's father in a car accident. Losing his father abruptly and incomprehensibly to a 2-year-old mind and heart, and growing up without a father unquestionably handicapped him and shaped who he was. There were other traumas too, but he did the best that he could, fashioning a life as his spirit moved him. He was creative and loved high adrenaline pursuits, riding his motorcycle, skydiving, and rock climbing. These things didn't initially come easy to him and became a love born out of courage. I think he tried to conquer his fears and master them, and he tried to better his own skills and abilities and record. The photo on the memoriam page, in the full photo, he's actually sitting on a motorcycle at Sears Point. He liked to drag race and try to, beat his own time each time. Most of the time, life with Richard was copacetic enough, but definitely adventuresome and often unpredictable. So when sleeplessness and accompanying aspects of what we progressives in the mental health field call neurodiversity appeared, it would come as a surprise to me and to his wife. And Patty may be on the Zoom today. I'm not sure. She was going to try to join us. We had forgotten that sleeping beneath the surface was this challenging visitor, possibly PTSD, possibly just his own cyclical nature. Clinicians are wont to label and pathologize conditions. I found through life experiences and through my line of work that what is more helpful is to listen to people rather than talk at them thinking we know what's what, and to see that we are all somewhere on a spectrum of mental health, which is subject to change at any given time. Recovery is always possible and should be the expectation. We need to hold this vision for people and encourage them. I learned what wonders can unfold when we are compassionate with one another and gentle in our approach. I wish there had been peer respites in the community where Richard lived in 2007, which was in Santa Rosa. And I am glad that they exist in many places now. I will not re-traumatize myself today by recounting aloud what happened at the hands of police, which was wholly unnecessary, and as one of our lawyers characterized it, sadistic. What is important is that society learn how we must treat one another, especially the most vulnerable among us. I salute my son and his bravery. He was loved and valued. And we who knew him will always share stories and smile, remembering him with amazement. Thank you. Chris.
Thank you, Parry, for your story. Thank you, Adrianne, for yours. So my name is Chris Malan, and I've worked for Napa County Mental Health for almost 40 years. And I've seen hundreds of mental health consumers. And if you walk away with one thing from today, it's to listen and to be in the moment and to be compassionate for someone who's maybe not themselves. The other thing I've learned is that I can help somebody with their mental health, but if they have an ulcer that's making them angry and in pain, you can help with the mental health, but the pain is there and needs to be addressed. And also the spirit. So in our training now, we learn to help people go to their spiritual side as well. So it's like we see a person coming to us with a mental health issue, but we look at them as a whole person, and we make sure that they are taking care of their physical health and that they pay attention to their spirit, and that they also, pay attention to their mental health, because they can come to you and say, oh, I have an ulcer, but then they're not sleeping, they can't eat, they're isolating. And so we know there's a mental health issue too. So we try to come at that because there's still stigma with mental health, and people can be ashamed, or they can be fearful, not knowing what's going to happen to them if they talk about, oh, I'm hearing voices. That's not an easy thing to say. And so we're very open. And sometimes you listen for a while before you make a suggestion. But the main thing is to listen. And the other thing is that people with mental health issues can be not severely mentally ill, but going through a crisis or have just had a trauma. And so it can be like a situational mental health symptom that's cropped up suddenly. And so like with children, bullying, or a teenager date rape, or a wife, her husband is beating her for the first time or not. It can be that they don't easily talk. So ears is to, if you see something, say something. And it can't always be the cops or mobile crisis or a therapist. Often it's a family member or friend that notices something. And so if you see something, say something, and or to listen until you can find a voice to say something. And just know that that could change everything if you are receptive in that moment, whether it's a parent, whether it's a friend, whether it's a husband, a wife. If you see a change in behavior, if you see someone isolating, if you see a child going to their room and not going out to play, or not eating their lunch, or coming home and being angry, throwing their dinner across the kitchen, a change in behavior, that's something to pay attention to. And it's something to listen to. And you really have to stop. You have to go, oh, something's not right, and take a moment. And that could save somebody's life. That could help somebody get help. That could help bring in a resource. And so I think our community has to really become more aware, because we have shootings, we have kids shooting their teachers, we have angry people carrying assault rifles, and mental health can't take care of all of it. The police can't take care of everything. But if we start at the very granular level of just noticing and saying something, or just listening, it can make a difference. I put together, and in my own life, I've really learned that, because my son was critically injured in 1996. He was 18, and he was hiking in the Sierras, and on the way back, his best friend fell asleep at the wheel, and there was a terrible car accident. My son is now paralyzed, and he lives with us, and we're 24/7 caregivers. And so I have my, I have my moments, and I have to do what Parry described, seek out a friend, go for a walk, talk to someone. When I'm down, I got to go to my resources, go to my support constantly, what Parry said, self-care. So that's important. But there are serious mental illnesses that do need intervention, like chronic deep depression, psychosis, bipolar, schizophrenia, these severe mental illnesses that do need, strong support from our mental health resources. In Napa County, we have Napa County Mental Health, and we have lots of nonprofits that also, like Mentis, and some of our subacute care treatment programs here locally. But the indoor to that, the one-stop shop would be Napa County Mental Health. That's where you're going to get help for severe mental illness. You may need help with medications. You may need a therapist, maybe more than stop, see something, say something, listen, that kind of stuff. Yes, you would need a higher level of intervention, especially, if you do listen and someone says they're going to kill themselves, or they're giving away all their things, or they wrote a letter as if, they're not going to be here anymore, and they said something to you in a discreet way, or not so discreet, take it seriously. If you ask, it is really okay to ask someone, a dear one, who you think is on the cliff ready to fall off. It's really okay to say, are you thinking about killing yourself? Well, you can bring those words out of your mouth. It's really the right thing to do. Do you feel like hurting yourself? Do you think you could kill yourself? Do you think you have a plan to hurt yourself, and then be ready to hear the answer. And don't freak out. Don't be judgmental. Be soft, be kind, be compassionate, and listen, and then get help. Okay? If someone's going to definitely has a plan, I'm going to walk out in traffic. There's nothing you can do to stop me. I'm done. I want to die. 911. You call 911. The state also passed a new law where there's 988, which is right to mental health emergency. Okay. So that's new. That just came in last year. So 911, if you can't remember 988, and you will get immediate mental health assistance. The county also has mobile response team, which is new. And it's about 2 years old now. And mental health goes out with the police when there's a mental health crisis, so that the mental health professional engages with the person with a mental health crisis, not the police shooting them or stun gunning them or, rushing them and slamming them to the ground and putting handcuffs on them. And so now what we have is a mental health response, which comes from a place of trust and compassion and a place of listening. And the police stand back here and let the mental health professional engage with the person who's in a mental health crisis and needs someone who understands mental health to help them in their moment of crisis instead of being shot and killed or, slammed to the ground, handcuffs and all that. So that's new. And you can get that through 911. And you just say, my son, my daughter is having a mental health crisis. Can you help us? And they'll immediately go to mobile crisis. And that team is great. They're professional therapists and they know their job and they know how to protect the person and help them safely get to help. I have put together some handouts at the table back there. So signs and symptoms of anxiety, signs and symptoms of depression, signs and symptoms of bipolar and psychosis. So help yourself. And thank you for having this topic today.